I was sound asleep when my phone rang in the middle of the night. It was 2:13 a.m. I looked at the screen and saw my granddaughter's name. I answered, and all I heard was her crying. Through the sobs, she told me she was at the police station, arrested, handcuffed, accused of assault. I could barely process what she was saying. Then she told me Derek, her stepfather, had hit her, and somehow she was the one in trouble. That was all I needed to hear. I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and drove out without thinking twice. After 32 years working as a prosecutor, I knew a domestic abuse case the second I heard one, but nothing prepared me for what I saw when I got there. The police believed Derek's version. My granddaughter was treated like the criminal. What happened next changed everything. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, because when you stop doing this, YouTube understands that you don't like this content and stops recommending good stories like this. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. I was asleep when the phone rang at 2:13 in the morning. The sound cut through the silence of my room, and for a second I didn't even understand what was happening. I reached for the phone, still half awake, and saw Emma's name on the screen. The moment I answered, I heard her crying. Her voice was shaky, broken, the kind of voice that tells you something terrible has happened before any words come out. She said she was at the police station. She said Derek had hit her, and worse, he was claiming she had attacked him. I sat up fast, suddenly wide awake. She told me she was handcuffed, sitting in a cold room, treated like a criminal even though she was the one with a swollen eye. I didn't ask anything else. I just told her to stay calm, that I was coming. I got dressed in whatever clothes I could grab, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. Even before I was in the car, my mind was already working like it used to when I was a prosecutor. 32 years in the job had taught me to recognize the signs of a domestic violence case from the first sentence, and Emma's first sentence was enough. Before leaving my driveway, I called my old partner from the department. I knew he wouldn't be asleep at that hour. Cops learn to live half awake. I told him the situation quickly, without details, and asked him to make sure someone responsible was on duty when I arrived. He sighed, the kind of sigh that means, this is going to be a mess, and said he would do what he could. The roads were almost empty, just a few trucks and cars passing by like ghosts. I kept thinking about Emma. I remembered her as a little girl, running around the backyard with a scraped knee and a smile. Now she was 19, scared, alone, and in handcuffs because a man smarter with lies than she was, with fear, decided to accuse her first. I tightened my grip on the wheel and pressed harder on the gas. I had handled dozens of these cases. The story was always the same. The abuser plays the victim first, and whoever speaks first often gets believed. I wasn't going to let that happen this time, not to my granddaughter. When I arrived at the station, the first thing I noticed was the attitude of the officers on duty. They looked at me with that expression I knew too well, the expression that says, "We already decided what happened." I asked for Emma, and they hesitated, like I was just another family member making trouble. I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't need to. I told them my name, my old position, and that I wanted to see the arrest report. The room got quieter. They exchanged looks, and one of them finally went to get the paperwork. While I waited, I scanned the area. Derek was there, sitting comfortably, talking to an officer like he was the one who needed protection. No marks on him, no cuffs, no sign of distress. His shirt was clean, his face calm. It was the usual picture. The man relaxed, the woman restrained. Rage rose inside me, but I kept my expression neutral. Emotion never helped in these situations. Facts did, procedure did, and I knew both better than anyone in that room. I demanded to see Emma. At first, they tried to tell me I needed authorization, that she was still being processed, that I had to wait. I didn't accept that. I said she had the right to speak to an adult family member and legal counsel, and I was both. I reminded them it was illegal to deny contact without cause. They knew I was right. They led me to a small holding room. Emma was sitting there, hands cuffed behind her back, hair messy, face still wet from tears, and a dark bruise forming under her left eye. She looked up and broke down again when she saw me. I told the officer standing there to remove the cuffs. He said he was following orders. I told him he was now following mine. My voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut. He hesitated only a moment before taking out the key. The The sound of the cuffs unlocking felt like the first real step toward fixing this. Once Emma could move her hands again, I sat beside her and asked her to tell me exactly what happened. Slowly, from the beginning. I didn't interrupt. I listened the way I used to listen to victims preparing for trial. She explained that she and Derek had argued, that he got angry, that he grabbed her, shoved her into a wall, and punched her when she tried to push him away. When the neighbors heard the noise and called the police, Derek immediately blamed her, saying she had attacked him first. And because she was upset, yelling, shaking, and he was calm, the officers had believed him. That was the part that made her voice break the most. Not the punch, but the fact that no one believed her. I wrote everything down in my head, every detail, every time she said "I swear" or "I didn't do anything." I believed her without needing proof, but proof was exactly what I planned to find next. I left the room and went straight to the officer in charge. I asked why Emma had been cuffed when Derek was not, despite his accusation being nothing more than words. They said she was emotional and that they needed control of the situation. I told them I had seen dozens of offenders calm as ice while victims cried, and that emotional distress was not a crime. I asked if anyone had photographed her injuries. No one had. I asked if anyone had checked Derek for injuries. No one had. I didn't even need to say anything after that. The officer finally realized the situation was not as simple as they had assumed. I requested that a female officer take Emma to be photographed and medically examined, and this time they agreed without arguing. It was a small victory, but an important one. Evidence fades if you don't move fast. Standing there, watching the shift in the room, I felt the old part of me, the prosecutor part, wake up fully. I wasn't just a grandmother anymore. I was someone who knew exactly how these cases collapsed when mishandled, and exactly how to rebuild them. I stayed firm, made sure every step was recorded, and made it clear that I would not leave until the truth was treated with the same respect they had given to Derek's lies. I wasn't there to cause a scene. I was there to make sure justice started that night, not weeks later when it was already too late. And so, inside that police station, as the officers finally began to reconsider what they thought they knew, I stood back, took a deep breath, and prepared for the next part, investigating what had really happened that night. I waited until the door closed and we were finally alone before I asked Emma to start from the beginning. She took a deep breath, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and told me the truth, piece by piece, like someone trying to rebuild a broken memory. She said things hadn't suddenly exploded that night. The problem had been growing for months. At first, Derek only yelled. He would lose his temper over small things and blame everyone else. Then the yelling turned into pushing. He would shove her or Rebecca during arguments and later say it was just a reaction. After that came the punches, always quick, always followed by excuses, stress, alcohol, misunderstanding. Emma said she kept hoping it would stop, that he would calm down or change, but it only got worse. That night, he started arguing with Rebecca again, calling her names, saying she was useless, and when Rebecca tried to walk away, he hit her hard in the arm. Emma instinctively stepped in, and Derek turned on her, striking her in the face. That was how she got the bruise under her eye. She said she didn't even think. She just reacted out of fear and anger. She told me she grabbed the nearest thing she could find in the house, which happened to be her mother's baseball bat. She didn't use it on Derek, even though part of her wanted to. Instead, she went outside and smashed his car, the windows, the mirrors, whatever she saw, because she felt like it was the only way she could fight back without hurting anyone. She knew it was wrong. She said that again and again, but she also said she was tired of watching her mother get hurt and doing nothing. That was when Derek called the police and said Emma had attacked him. He left out the part where he had hit 2 women before she even touched the car. When the police arrived, Emma was shaking and crying, and Derek was calm and collected, telling a perfect version of the story where he was helpless and she was dangerous. The officers believed him immediately. They arrested her, handcuffed her, and didn't even bother to take pictures of her injuries. She kept asking them to check on her mother, but they ignored her. By the time she was in the patrol car, she knew Derek had won the first round. I listened without interrupting, letting her finish every thought. When she fell silent, I asked her the question I didn't want to ask, whether Derek had ever done anything worse than hitting. She hesitated, looked away, and said she didn't know, but she was afraid of what might happen if no one stopped him. She said Rebecca never wanted to report him because she thought things would only get harder if she did. Derek controlled the money, the house, the car, everything. Rebecca had no job, no savings, and no family besides me and Emma. She stayed quiet because she felt trapped, and Emma stayed quiet because she didn't want to make things worse for her mother. That silence was what Derek depended on, and he knew it. Now, with Emma arrested and Rebecca alone at home, she said she didn't know what Derek would do next. Her voice shook again when she said that. That fear, not for herself, but for her mother, was stronger than the pain in her face. I put my hand on hers and told her I believed her. Not as a prosecutor, not as someone who had seen 100 cases like this, but as her grandmother. I promised her I would not let this disappear into paperwork or excuses. I told her I didn't care if I had to stand in front of half the police force, her mother's useless lawyer, or Derek himself. I wasn't going to let this continue. I had spent decades watching women get ignored, blamed, or dismissed, and I had sworn more than once that if it ever came close to my family, I wouldn't stay quiet. Now it was here, and I meant every word I said. Emma looked at me like she wanted to believe it, but didn't want to hope too much. I squeezed her hand and repeated it anyway. This ends now. I wasn't sure how yet, but I knew one thing. Derek had picked the wrong family to try to break apart, and he was about to learn that the hard way. Derek showed up at the police station pretending he was worried about Emma, like he had rushed over out of love and responsibility. I watched him walk in with that act he always used, the one where he tried to look calm, mature, and reasonable. He greeted the officers, shook hands, and spoke in a soft voice, as if he were the victim of a family crisis instead of the cause of one. But the moment he saw me there, standing beside Emma, the calm expression on his face slipped for a second. He hadn't expected me. He thought this would be simple. Accuse Emma first, play the innocent husband, convince the police she was unstable, and walk out untouched. I didn't give him time to settle back into the performance. I waited until he was in front of the captain, and then I started asking questions. I pointed out the parts of his story that didn't line up with the police report, the lack of injuries on him, the fact that no officer had checked Rebecca, and how Emma's injuries were visible and fresh. Derek tried to stay confident, but I saw his jaw tighten. He wasn't used to being challenged by someone who actually understood the system he was trying to manipulate. The more I spoke, the more Derek's excuses became shaky. He said Emma lost control, but couldn't explain why she was the only one injured. He said he never touched her, but didn't have an answer for the bruise on her face. I brought up how neighbors heard shouting, how he was the only one calm when the police arrived, and how that was a common pattern in domestic abuse cases. The captain began to look unsure of his initial judgment. Then I suggested something simple, a polygraph test. I said Emma would take one if needed, and asked if Derek would do the same. The room went still. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then tried to act offended, as if the idea was beneath him. He said he had to go home and take care of the family, and that he shouldn't have to prove anything. But we all knew the real reason. The test would expose him. That was the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of being arrested, but fear of losing control over the story he had built. He left in a hurry, leaving behind the fake concern he had walked in with. Once he was gone, I turned back to the captain and said there was now more than enough reason to re-examine the case. I demanded that Emma's injuries be photographed properly and added to the report. I also demanded she be allowed to give her full statement without Derek in the building. I reminded the captain that failure to document a victim's injuries could lead to problems in court, and that I would not hesitate to bring that up if needed. The officers finally started acting like they were dealing with a real crime instead of a teenage tantrum. They brought in a camera, took pictures of Emma's face, her wrist marks from the handcuffs, and the small bruises already appearing on her arms. Emma was quiet through it all, but I could tell she felt a small amount of relief. Finally, someone was taking her side. When the paperwork was finished, I insisted she be released into my custody. The captain agreed, though he warned the investigation was still open. I told him that was exactly what I wanted. As we walked out of the station, I kept one hand on Emma's back. She was exhausted, scared, and still shaking a little, but at least she wasn't alone. The night air felt strange, like we were stepping out of one battlefield and heading straight into another, because I knew this wasn't over. Derek wasn't the type to accept losing control quietly. The moment he realized he might be exposed, legally, socially, or financially, he would push back harder. Men like him didn't collapse, they retaliated. That meant Emma wasn't safe yet, neither was Rebecca. I drove us toward my house and kept thinking about the next steps. Lawyers, restraining orders, getting Rebecca away from him before he convinced her to defend him again. I didn't know what Derek would do next, but I knew one thing clearly. I couldn't wait for him to make the next move. My priority now was to protect my granddaughter and warn my daughter before it was too late. I drove to Rebecca's house with Emma asleep in the seat next to me, her head leaning against the door like she hadn't rested in days. The drive felt longer than it really was, maybe because my mind wouldn't stop thinking about what might happen next. I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other close to my phone in case I needed to call for help again. Every time I glanced at Emma, I remembered how she looked at the police station, handcuffed, bruised, and still trying to stay strong. I didn't want her to wake up before we got to the house. She needed a break from fear, even if it only lasted a few minutes. When I parked down the street, I called Rebecca and told her I was outside. At first, she denied everything, just like she always did when Derek was near. Her voice was low, shaky, like she was scared of the walls hearing her. I told her I already knew what happened, that I had seen Emma's face, and that Derek's lies weren't going to work anymore. There was a long silence. Then she whispered that she would try to come out, but that she had to be quiet because Derek was asleep. That alone told me enough about how she was living. It took a few minutes, but finally, I saw her coming toward the car, moving in small steps, looking back every few seconds like she expected Derek to jump out and grab her. When she got in, she closed the door slowly, as if even the sound might wake him. The streetlight showed her face clearly, and I saw the cut on her lip, already turning dark around the edges. She didn't want me to stare, but I couldn't help it. It hurt to see my own daughter trying to act normal while she was falling apart. She started talking before I even asked anything. She said Derek had been angry all week, that he blamed her for ruining the house because she tried to defend Emma. She said she didn't want to cause trouble, didn't want to make things worse, didn't want to be the wife who destroys a marriage over one mistake. I had heard that same excuse from dozens of abused women in courtrooms, shelters, and emergency rooms. The excuses were always the same. He's stressed, he's going through something, he never used to be like this. Maybe I provoked him, maybe I deserved it. I told her she didn't deserve anything except safety, but she just kept trying to explain away the pain. I could see her eyes filling with tears as she kept talking, and the more she spoke, the clearer it was that she wasn't just scared of Derek, she was scared of what leaving him would mean. I reminded her that she didn't have to stay married to someone who used fear as a weapon. She said she knew that, but she felt trapped because she had no money, no control over the house, no idea where to go if she left. I told her she had me, and she always had me. That seemed to break something inside her, because she leaned back in the seat and covered her face with both hands, trying not to cry out loud. Just when she started to calm down, her phone vibrated. 3 short buzzes. I saw her reaction before she even checked the screen. She whispered, "He's awake." I didn't panic, but I felt every muscle in my body tighten. A minute later, the headlights in the driveway turned on, and Derek's truck engine started. He didn't just pull out quietly. He drove straight into the middle of the street and turned the wheel so the truck blocked the only exit. That was when Emma woke up in the passenger seat, confused, still tired, and already afraid. I told both of them to stay calm. Derek got out of the truck and walked toward us like he owned the whole street. He didn't look angry. He looked confident. The same confidence abusers have when they still think they control every move. He stood in front of the car and told Rebecca to get out. He didn't yell, but the way he said her name was enough to make it clear it wasn't a request. I rolled down my window just enough so he could hear me and held my phone up so he could see I was recording everything. I didn't say anything dramatic. I just told him that the police already knew what happened, and this was being documented. His expression changed immediately. He looked at the phone like it was a weapon. He tried to act calm again and told Rebecca to come home and talk like adults. She didn't answer him, and that silence hurt him more than anything I could have said. I told him to move the truck or I would call the police for harassment and unlawful obstruction. He wasn't used to someone speaking to him like that. He kept trying to look in the car, trying to see Emma, trying to see if she had told me everything. For a few seconds, I thought he might try something physical. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched, and he kept shifting his weight like he wanted to force the door open. But then the reality hit him. He was being recorded, and he no longer controlled the story. He backed up, walked to his truck, and drove it out of the way. But even while he was moving it, he stared through the windshield at us, like he was memorizing the moment he lost control. When we drove away, I told Rebecca and Emma not to look back, not because of anything symbolic, but because Derek would take even a glance as weakness. I could feel both of them shaking in the car, one from fear, the other from anger. I kept driving, but in my head, I was already planning what came next, because I knew this wasn't over. Derek didn't walk away because he accepted it. He walked away because he needed a new plan. As we got farther from the house, I thought about everything I had seen that night. Derek's confidence wasn't confidence, it was control. Now that he knew he was losing it, he was dangerous in a different way. He had already gone from yelling to pushing to hitting and now to blocking a street. Men like him escalated, not because they felt powerful, but because they felt it slipping. I knew it wasn't enough to just get Emma and Rebecca out of the house. I had to make sure he couldn't come near them again. I had to act fast before he figured out his next move. I didn't say all of this out loud because they needed rest, not more fear. But inside my head, the decision was already made. Protecting them wasn't a temporary job. It was now the only priority. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Derek understood for the first time that he was losing control. And a man like that doesn't let go quietly. My job now was to stay ahead of him before too late became real. Back at my house, I didn't waste any time. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with my notebook, and started organizing everything. I listed everyone I needed to call, lawyers I trusted, officers I worked with, shelters I could count on, and friends who owed me favors. I also went through my old contacts and called a private investigator I had worked with during a tough case years ago. Her name was Laura. She was sharp, quick, and didn't waste time asking useless questions. I told her I needed everything she could find on Derek, past addresses, ex-girlfriends, jobs, court records, anything that would help. While she got to work, I printed copies of Emma's injuries, filed the police reports properly, and backed everything up in both digital and physical folders. I made sure nothing could get lost. Emma and Rebecca were resting in the guest rooms, finally away from his voice, his hands, his control. The house was quiet, but I couldn't relax. Every second felt like I had to be doing something to stay ahead of him. I had learned long ago that men like Derek don't stop Becky. Derek had done the same thing to at least 3 women before Rebecca. The pattern was almost identical every time. He'd isolate them, control their finances, slowly destroy their confidence, and when things turned physical, he would get lawyers involved to shut down any legal action. One woman tried to file charges, but the case disappeared after her testimony was discredited by witnesses Derek paid. Another ended up moving across the country, cutting contact with everyone. The third one filed a restraining order, but Derek countersued and dragged the process out until she gave up. Seeing the details written out made me feel sick and angry. These women had tried to fight back, but Derek had always been 2 steps ahead, until now. Laura also found out he'd recently pulled a large amount of money from a savings account and had purchased burner phones. That told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't planning to cooperate or defend himself. He was planning to disappear. I went straight to the local authorities with the full report and used every ounce of my old reputation to get them to act. It worked. The arrest warrant was approved, but by the time the warrant was official, Derek was already gone. He had packed bags, cleaned out part of the house, and vanished before the sun even came up. Rebecca said she never heard him leave, and the security cameras showed nothing. He had disabled them sometime during the night. It was like he'd done this before, and maybe he had. He didn't leave a note, didn't call, didn't even try to explain. He just ran. I thought for a moment that maybe he would stay away. Maybe disappearing was his way of giving up control, but that was wishful thinking. Within a few days, the story started to spread. Local news picked up the arrest warrant. I didn't go public myself, but I didn't stop it either. And then something unexpected happened. Other women started reaching out. Strangers. One had been in a short relationship with him 5 years ago and left after he shoved her during an argument. Another said she worked with him and saw him screaming at Rebecca in a parking lot once. A third was anonymous, but she left enough details to prove her story. It became clear this wasn't a rare incident. Derek had been doing this for years. That's when the calls began. At first they were silent. I'd answer, and no one would speak. Then came the blocked numbers. When I picked up, I heard breathing, nothing else. Later, there were messages, threats, things like, "You think this is over?" or "You don't know who you're dealing with." I saved every message, recorded every call, logged every time and date. I reported them, but I knew he was being careful. He didn't say anything that could be used directly against him, just enough to remind us he was watching. One night, we were sitting in the living room when we heard glass break. I ran to the front of the house and saw a brick had come through the window. Attached to it was a note that said, "Stop, now, or else." That was the first time I saw real fear on Rebecca's face, not just worry, but panic. Emma stayed quiet, holding the phone, recording the damage while I called the police. The officer who arrived said he couldn't do much without cameras or witnesses. That didn't surprise me. I had seen that answer too many times before. That was when I realized this wasn't just harassment. Derek wasn't acting like a man on the run. He was acting like someone still trying to win. A few days later, the case changed direction completely. One of the officers I had worked with years ago contacted me and said the FBI had been alerted. Because Derek crossed state lines and had multiple women coming forward, they were now involved. I felt a strange mix of relief and tension. Relief, because someone finally took this seriously. Tension, because now the danger was real on another level. Derek wasn't just an abusive husband anymore. He was now classified as a dangerous fugitive. The agent assigned to the case met with me, took all the evidence, and asked about the brick, the threats, the messages. They believed he wasn't trying to prove his innocence. He was trying to control us, intimidate us, make us back down. I agreed. He never once reached out to apologize, explain, or even deny what we were saying. His goal wasn't to avoid prison. His goal was to keep us scared. That's when I moved Rebecca and Emma into a temporary safe house for a few nights, just until we were sure he wouldn't show up in person. Every step we took made it clearer that Derek wasn't just running. He was still playing a game he thought he could win. What scared me the most wasn't what he had already done. It was what he might do next. Men like him, once exposed, become reckless. And when control slips through their fingers, they start finding new ways to take it back. I started sleeping with my phone on the nightstand, volume all the way up, just in case. I checked the locks twice every night and didn't let anyone walk outside alone. Emma stopped going to classes for a while, and Rebecca quit her job. I contacted legal support to fast-track protection orders, but I knew paperwork wouldn't stop him if he decided to act. I watched every car that drove down the street and made sure neighbors were aware of what was happening, just in case he tried to blend in. The FBI agents kept me updated, but even they admitted that a man with cash, fake IDs, and no digital trail was hard to track. Every time I looked at my daughter and granddaughter, I felt the pressure of keeping them safe. Derek didn't want justice. He didn't want a fair chance to tell his side. He wanted to keep the power he had built through fear, and he would do anything to hold on to it, even if it meant attacking us again. When the FBI finally tracked Derek's location, everything happened faster than I expected. That night, we were at my house. I was drinking coffee, sitting in the kitchen, reviewing some papers when I saw the headlights outside. At first, I thought it was just a neighbor or maybe one of the agents doing a routine check, but then the car didn't leave. It pulled up further, rolled onto the yard, and stopped only a few feet from the front door. It was Derek. His car was still running, and the lights were pointed straight at the house like he was trying to blind us. I told Rebecca and Emma to go to the back room and stay down. I didn't want them near the windows. Then my phone rang. It was him. His name showed up on the screen, and I answered without thinking. My hand was steady, but my heart wasn't. I spoke slowly. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just listened, because I needed to know where his mind was. Outside, the FBI agents were already getting into position. They didn't storm the house. They were trained to wait, and they did. But none of us really knew what he was going to do. His voice on the phone was different this time. It wasn't cold like before. It wasn't fake concern or manipulation. He sounded defeated. He told me he had been running for weeks and that he knew it wouldn't end well. He said people like him don't change. And for the first time, he didn't try to blame Rebecca or Emma or anyone else. He called himself a predator. He said the word plainly, like he had been thinking about it over and over. He said hurting women gave him a kind of control that nothing else ever gave him, and that once he realized that, It was too late to be anything else. I stayed quiet for a second, then told him that if he really understood what he was, the only right thing left was to surrender. I told him the FBI would handle it, and that he could at least stop more pain from happening. I told him Rebecca and Emma were safe, and that he had already lost. But even before I finished speaking, I could tell by the tone in his voice that he had already decided what was going to happen. He wasn't looking for forgiveness or understanding. He was saying goodbye in his own twisted way. I watched from the hallway window as he stepped out of the car. He moved slowly. One hand was in his pocket. The other held something. At first I couldn't see it clearly. He walked a few steps toward the house but didn't come too close. The agents yelled at him to stop and raise his hands. He didn't. Instead, he looked around at the yard, at the trees, and finally at the house. He knew he was surrounded. Then he raised the hand that had the object in it. It was a detonator, a small one, nothing complex, just a basic handheld trigger. My stomach dropped. I knew then this wasn't a bluff. I stepped back from the window and told Rebecca and Emma to stay down. One of the agents shouted again, telling him not to move, not to touch the button, that he still had a chance. But Derek didn't listen. He looked directly toward the house, smiled, and pressed the button. The explosion was fast, loud, and final. The car lit up in a flash. The agents ran forward, but it was over in seconds. Derek died instantly. He didn't get to speak again. He didn't get to hurt anyone else. That chapter closed, right there in my front yard. In the hours that followed, the area was flooded with emergency crews. The house shook, but thankfully none of us inside were hurt. Windows cracked, lights flickered, but we were alive. That's what mattered. The FBI confirmed there were no additional explosives. It had been a one-man plan, fueled by desperation. They said he had most likely planned it in the last 48 hours after realizing he was out of options. That's when the weight of it all finally hit us. Rebecca cried for the first time in days, not for Derek, but from exhaustion, relief, everything mixed together. Emma didn't say much. She just sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the wall. I stayed calm for them, but when I was finally alone, I cried too. Not because I felt sorry for him. I didn't. But because we had lived under his shadow for so long, and now that it was over, I didn't know what the next day would feel like. The fear had been constant. It shaped our choices, our movements, our silence. And now, in one violent second, that fear had disappeared. It wasn't justice the way I wanted it, but it was an ending. Over the next few months, we did what we could to heal. It wasn't perfect. Nothing goes back to normal after something like that. But we worked on it. Rebecca started taking online classes again. She said she wanted to become a counselor, maybe help other women like her someday. She was nervous about it, but every day she showed more confidence than the day before. Emma began therapy. She was hesitant at first, but once she met the right counselor, she started opening up. She still had nightmares. Sometimes she'd wake up shaking, but she was no longer ashamed of what happened. She began journaling, even sharing parts of her story anonymously online to help others. As for me, I didn't stop either. I kept doing what I had always done, helping victims, speaking up in courtrooms, giving legal advice when I could. But now, it felt even more personal. Every time I sat with someone who was afraid, I could say, I understand, and truly mean it. Derek's violence didn't destroy us. It changed us, yes. It scarred us, but it didn't win. We chose to rebuild, step by step. I still get nervous when I hear a car pull up late at night. Sometimes I double-check the locks more than I need to. Trauma doesn't just disappear. It stays in your body like a reminder, but we aren't frozen by it anymore. Derek Collins thought fear would be his legacy, that the silence he forced on others would keep him powerful. But in the end, it was his own fear of losing control that destroyed him. He couldn't live in a world where his lies didn't work anymore. That's why he came back. That's why he pressed that button. But even in doing so, he gave us something he never expected: freedom. He removed himself from our lives, permanently. And that was the only real power he had left. In the end, he proved everything we had said about him. He showed the world exactly who he was. And instead of breaking us, he gave us the chance to rebuild. He's gone. We're here, and we're not afraid of him anymore. Derek didn't win. That was what mattered most. His threats, his control, his games, none of it worked in the end. We survived. And even more than that, we found a way to move forward. The justice system didn't fail us this time. It protected us. It took our side. The agents who helped, the investigators who kept digging, the voices of other women who came forward, all of that made a difference. Derek wanted power, not truth. He wanted silence, not peace. But he got none of it. His story ended, and ours kept going. Rebecca isn't scared to speak anymore. Emma isn't scared to heal. And I'm not scared to fight. Not now, not ever. I see them rebuilding their lives, and I feel proud. We turned pain into strength. That's what Derek never understood. Hurting someone doesn't make you strong. Surviving does. Helping others does. And that's what we'll keep doing. For every woman he tried to break, for everyone still too scared to speak. He's gone. We're not. And we're never letting someone like him win again. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.